Good morning. Two more hands here. We are sticking with our theme of open raising and calling a 3-bet. Both of these hands, I'm in mid position. So let's take a look at them. Hand number one, I get 9-7 of spades in the low jack, and it's folded to me, and I open raise. Let's look at this open raise spot first. This is a suited gapper, and normally you don't. If you look at hand charts, you don't normally open this week in this position. Now, what we're looking at is I already have three people fold, and we have to consider the players behind us. At this point, I have 570 hands on the cutoff, 2,000 hands for the button, almost 1,000 hands for the small blind, and only 4 hands for the big blind. So what it looks like right now is that these three players are all very tight. I have 147 on this player. He's 25-16. He's the loosest of the players, and he calls pre-flop 2-bets 16%. This is 8%, 9%, 7%, and I don't have a whole lot of information on this player. So what I'm thinking with this raise is that I'm going to generate a lot of folds and may be able to pick up the pot. We're at a very tight table right now. So what I was doing was trying to utilize aggression just to pick up the blinds, especially with some weaker hands. Now, I wouldn't do this with offsuit. I'm doing this with a suited hand, so that way, if I get called, I can fall back on a flush draw. The button here comes in for a raise. 3-bets me to 11 big blinds, which is standard. I have a lot of information on this player, 2,000 hands, but unfortunately, we don't have a lot of the auto notes filled out. So even though I have 2,000 hands, we're not seeing a lot of showdowns with him, which to me suggests that he is playing more on the nitty side of things. He's not going to get down, call down on the showdown without having some sort of hand that is going to be solid. So at a minimum, probably top pair, if not better. Just kind of depends on the flop. So this guy's going to be tight. His 3-bet percentage is 4.5%. If we do 3-bet pipe position, get this open, you can see that 6% on the button. It doesn't really there isn't really a huge change based on position, so he's probably playing more of a static range, static 3-betting range. And what kind of range would do that? Well, we could start off with something like that. That's 3%. I think he's playing a little bit wider than that. Maybe pocket tens, maybe ace jack. If we add in ace queen offsuit, I think it gets a little bit too wide. So, but he may have some. But we know he's tight, and we know he's not going to go down to showdown without some sort of strong hand. Whether or not he has king queen, that's a good question. I don't think he's going to do ace jack offsuit. I think if he's going to 3-bet ace, it'll be ace queen offsuit, and not everyone does ace queen offsuit. So I think what we're going to do is just leave this as his range, which is 4.5%. Really tight here. Both blinds fold, and now it comes back to me. And I look at this, and what I think I should have done is just go ahead and fold. I attempted to pick up the blinds, as you can say, a steal from mid position against a table full of tight players. That didn't work. I should have folded. But I was also thinking, well, I know he's going to be tight. If I call, there may be opportunity for me to pick up the pot post flop. Because again, his c-bet flop's only 60%, his c-bet turns 48%, his c-bet river's 50%. He's going to be honest with his c-bets. He's going to continue c-betting when he has at least top pair. So if we do that as at least top pair, this range is going to hit 51% of the time. Uh, I'm not sure if this is something that I should have taken advantage of and possibly four bet. If I four bet, I think he's only continuing with Kings plus, um, maybe Ace King, uh, and I'll generate folds. But do I really want to do that? Do I really want to build a pot against a deep stack player? Not really. So I kind of think I should have just folded here instead of gambling and trying to see if I could take the pot away from him on the flop or turn. So I just call. Board comes 7-2-4 of clubs. And we know that that doesn't help his range. His range is tight. Does this help our range at all? Well, maybe. They have to be able to put me on a 7. Now, I could have the club draw, but so could he. So, board kind of misses. I do have top pair, and that's going to be ahead of all of the unpaired cards. So let's see. I'm going to check here and see what he does. I check and he checks. Now, what hands is he going to check? Well, I told you he's tight. He only c-bet 60% of the time on the flop. So my thought was he's going to be betting top pair or better. So top pair with the flush draw, over pair with the flush draw. I think he's going to be betting all of those. And instead, he just checked. Well, is he going to check all of the ones without a flush draw? So if we do overpaired no flush draw, what will he, maybe he checks those because he's scared of that club. So I don't think he's going to check with his set. I think he'll bet with his flushes. He has the flush. I think that's going to fall into a 60% range. I think he's going to check his pocket pair below top pair. He doesn't have his ace high hands. He's checking. I'm not entirely sure if his flush draws. I'm going to take these nut flush draws out because I just kind of feel like if he had a hand that strong, he would have gone ahead and bet it. So I've got him checking ace high hands, no flush draw, which to me, if we look at that, I'm about 50% because he has these flush draws in there. I kind of assumed he would have checked. Actually, we're going to be a little bit better because the flushes, the made flushes, aren't there. So we've got top pair and we have the over pair, no flush draws. We've got ace high hands. So I think that looks good for me. And then a king comes on the turn. So now that the flop checked, my thought was, well, okay, he doesn't have an over pair. So now let's see if I can take the pot down from him. So the board comes king of diamond, and it's to me, and I bet. I bet half pot. What do I think he's going to call half pot bets with? Well, let's see here. I think he's gonna call with his set, definitely. I think he's going to call with his overpair. So both of these are cards that don't have the flush draw with it, and he's scared of it. I think he's going to call with his top pair hands. Do I think he's going to raise? No. Do I think he's going to call pocket pair below top pair? No, probably not. I think this tight player is just going to think that I have a king and I'm just gonna fold. Is he going to continue calling with his flushes? So now you can have your nut flush, second nut, and third nut flush draws. I think so. I think he would do that. I think he would call that. So he would call it 53.8%. I'm behind because of the pair that he's now hit, but there are flush draws in his range. So he calls, which again isn't really good news for me. and then the three of diamonds hits. So that's actually really good because it suggests now that he's not that he doesn't hit that last club. So the question is, if I bet here, what percentage of hands is he going to fold? I think he's going to fold all of his unpaired hands, which means he'll fold 28.6% of the time. How do I generate those folds? Well, I bet half pot. So I bet I'm risking 21.8 big bets to win 45.9 plus my risk. I need him to fold 32% of the time. Um, I don't think he's going to do that. So I actually don't like this bet. Could I bet even higher? What if I did a pot size bet? So if I do bet 45.9 divided by 45.9 plus 45.9. If I bet larger, I need him to fold even more. And would he fold his top pair hands? No, I don't think so. I think this is a player that would actually call with top pair. Uh, Maybe he'd fold, but when you look at his top pair, he's got ace king. And I just don't think people call or fold with ace king. If we look at his one at showdown, 58%. He normally wins at showdown, but he only goes to showdown 29% of the time. So I think the only way we can get this fold is to go a little bit smaller. So I think my bet's too big. So the question is, how small can we go? Well, I bet 21. What if we bet 15 big blinds? So if we do 15 big blinds divided by what's in the pot plus 15, now I need him to fold 24% of the time for my bet to show profit. This is probably a better size bet because I think the ace high hands are going to fold. And that's what I'm trying to generate. I'm trying to get those folds. But do I? Do I need those folds? I have a pair. I've got a 7. All of those ace high hands, I beat them. So what's the use of folding? Well, if I think he's going to fold some of these hands, the top pair, over pair, then I can make the bet. So, overall, as we work through the hand, as we look at his range, yeah, he can fold out all the hands I beat. He's only going to call the ones. He's only going to call the bets that beat me. So I don't think this is a good bet at all. I think it'd be better if I just checked, regardless of the size. We just work through the size to practice estimating, break-even percentages and so forth. So I did bet, and my thought was if I right now, if I bet, I'm going to get called with these hands. So 71% of the time, I'm going to definitely be beat. Let's see what he has. He's got pocket queens, which is somewhat surprising because I took pocket queens out of his range. So right at here, I didn't think pocket queens would stay. And what's more, but notice he did check with his non-flush draw. We took those out on the flop and said, okay, I think if he has an overpair with the club, he's gonna bet that. But if he doesn't, he's gonna be scared of that club. I mean, that's just what this player looks like he'll do. So at the king, then, when I bet, I thought he would fold the queens and the jacks. Well, I was wrong. So now with the kings and the jacks, we can proceed and say, okay, if I bet, what is he going to fold? He may have been stubborn. Maybe a higher bet would get him to fold this. So perhaps I could get him to fold 22% of the hands that I actually beat, but my gut tells me he's not going to do that. That he's going to call down with a pocket pair because he doesn't believe that I actually have a king. So this might have been a good value bet spot if I actually did have a king. All right, so this is hand 1. We missed this hand in his range. We were working well until we got to the turn, and then I didn't think he would call once that king hits. So we missed this hand. Let's move on to the next one. So the next one, I'm also in mid position. This time I am in the hijack. This is a 10 NL table. I raise to 3 big bets. And much like the previous table, King 9 suited in, middle position could be raised, could be open raised. Just kind of depends on the situation. And in this situation, these players behind me look like they are tight. 38 hands. Out of 38 hands, he's playing 5-3. 362 hands, this button is playing 13-7. This is a high percentage bet that I think both of these players are going to fold, which will either get me in position against one of the blinds, or I'll just outright steal it. Maybe we need to temper that because we are six-handed, and sometimes players loosen up when they're six-handed, but right now it looks like these players are tight. Even the button or the small blind's tight, so I think if I get called, I'm going to be in position throughout this hand, and that's a position I want to be in. Well, that didn't happen. Villain 3 actually raises. Now we have to be careful because we only have 38 hands, and this is his first 3 bet. So what can we do? What should we do? Well, I think here it's a fold. We took a stab. We had King 9 suited. We only have one high card. I think it's best just to fold and be done with it, especially when we put together his range. He has not. So he's had 18 opportunities to 3-bet, and he has not taken any of them. By position, when we look at his opportunities, he's had 2 opportunities in the cutoff, 4 opportunities in the button, and he has not taken those opportunities. So I think he's going to be tight. Even with 5-3, he's going to be tight. Probably something like that. Maybe the ace-jack suited. But we're going to play something really tight, and I'm way at the bottom of this range. So I should be folding this and not trying to steal the pot later on. So calling and stealing pot later on. And I'm going to say the reason why we don't is because I don't have any information. I don't know how he plays. Right now, he looks tight. He looks very tight. So if he looks very tight, I'm going to assume he plays tight post-flop, but I just don't know. I don't think there's enough ways for me to win the pot post-flop to make this a plus EV play. I should have just folded, but I didn't. I called. And that's why we're reviewing this hand. So the board actually hits me. Gives me a king of club, 6 of diamonds, 4 of hearts, which gives me some good equity. Improves it. I've got top pair. I'm going to beat now his jacks and queens. I'm going to beat his ace queen, ace jack. I'm going to be behind his ace king and his aces and his kings. But what is also important is that I now have a backdoor flush. So question is, what do we do? Should we bet this? Should we don't lead into him? Or should we just check and plan to call, or check and plan to check raise? We don't know how this player plays. Against most players, they are going to c-bet most of their range, most if not all of their range, on the flop. So, if we do that, he's going to be betting, his ace high hands at 22%, pocket pairs, all of these. If I bet, I don't think he's going to call his ace high hands. I think he's only going to call the kings. Kings are better. So I think if I bet and he calls, I'm going to be behind. So I think it's probably better just to check and let him bet with these weaker cards in his range. He does bet, and he doesn't quite bet half pot, which I think is somewhat telling. So why do some people not bet half pot? I think some of them will bet smaller because they hit a monster hand. So in this case, trip kings, possibly aces. Sometimes they bet smaller because they're bluffing and they don't want to, build up a big pot. we'll note that right now I have 86 big blinds. He's got me covered, so our effective stacks is 86. So we do have to watch, as the pot gets larger. If I call here, I'm gonna basically have a 2x pot size bet remaining, um, about that amount, anyways. So should I call? Should I fold? Well, against this range, the C betting range, I'm still ahead at 58%. And it's because we think he's going to be betting his ace, queen, ace, jack. So I do think we should call here and see what he does on the turn. If we get a heart, I think that's really good for our hand. It opens up even more possibilities to actually bluff at or semi bluff at the pot. But we didn't get that. We got the 4 of clubs. So right now, whoever's ahead is still ahead. And at this point, he still has his jacks and queens in there. So I'm ahead of those, which translate to my equity at 55.9, so 56%. So do we bet now? I don't think so. Again, if we bet now, he's going to fold those pocket pair below top pair. Uh, he could still have a flush draw that he could call if I bet, but I think overall, if I bet, he's gonna call with hands that beat me. Now, what if he checks behind? Well, I think that's actually pretty good because I think he would still bet. I think he would bet with his full house. I think he would bet with his overpair plus. I think he would bet with his top pair plus. So his ace king hands that are there, I do think he would continue betting those. So if he checks behind, then I think we're at pocket pair below top pair and maybe a flush draw. So what does he do? He does check behind. So I think what we can do is eliminate a lot of those hands. So he's checking at 57%, and now you can see I'm at 92.5%. So that's pretty good. Now, does that fit a tight player? I do think so. I think a tight player would check behind a hand like maybe king, queen, and king, jack because they're afraid that I might have the ace, king, and that's somewhat of a mentality of a tight player. But right now, I don't have king, queen, or king, jack in his range. I think I'm giving him a really tight 3-betting range. So right now, I'm way ahead. And then the jack of spades comes, and how does that affect it? Well, now of his checking range, he hits trips. That's going to be 18%. And if I bet, he's definitely going to call that at 18%. He's going to fold all the other ones. What about the other pocket pair? Queens? What about the middle pair? His jack now, the ace jack. Do I think he's going to bet those? Maybe not. So the question is, should I bet or should I just check and plan to call? Well, if I check and he checks behind, I'm going to lose value. I'm going to lose some money, but that could be offset by the risk of him folding out everything that I beat. So he's only calling with hands that beat me, and that then eliminates the value bet itself. I mean, value bet's only a bet for value if they can call with hands that lose. And I'm not quite sure he can do that. If we look at his one money at showdown, well, he hasn't gotten to showdown yet, so we don't know how he plays. So I think with this, I think it'd be better to just check and then call any bet, hoping that he would bet with queens or bet with ace jack. I didn't do that. I actually bet 17.8 big blinds, which is again looks like a little less than half pot. And I just working through this hand, I don't like that bet. I don't like that bet because I have value. I have a king. I can win at showdown. Why do I want to bet and fold out hands that I can beat? So I really don't like this bet. I think I'm only going to get called by hands that beat me. And surprisingly, he raises. And I think that's even stronger to suggest that he has the jacks. And at that point, let's look at what I have to what I have to do to call. So the pot right now is 105.3. I have to call the difference between those. So I have to call 50 minus 17.8. So I have to call 32 more to win 105.3. So I have to win 31% of the time, and I don't think I'm there because I only think he's doing that with jacks. He could have surprised me. He could have played, pocket kings like that. Could have maybe pocket aces, but I think right here he made that bet. He could have put me all in. I should fold here. I didn't. I called, and again foolishly called. And he shows ace king, which I didn't have in his range because I assumed he would have continued betting that turn. Uh, so this is a second hand now where I excluded some hands from him from his range because I assumed he would have bet. Well, now we put that in there. If he didn't bet ace king, then he's probably also not betting the overpair and probably not the full house. So I think here he's just thinking maybe he's gonna uh, slow play and let me bet. Maybe he has a read on me. Maybe he reads me as being aggressive. I don't know. But if we put in that top pair and the overpair, maybe not the full house. I don't know. Full house is pretty strong. So he checks his entire range, and then Jack Spades hits. Now, again, I don't think he's going to be calling with any hands that I beat. So I still think the river should have just been a check. And should it have been, if I checked and he bet, should I have called? Um, I don't know. A tight player like this, I don't know if he would bet pocket queens. I don't know. Would he bet ace jack? I don't know. Again, if I include all of those, if I include everything, 100%, I'm at 42%, and I just don't. If he bets, let's say 50. Let's get this. Actually, let's do pot. If he bets pot, so I have to call, 37.5. 37.5 to win his bet plus the current pot. So I have to win, 50% of the time for that pot bet. I'm risking 37.5 to win, twice that. I don't have that, so I don't know. It seems like a weak fold if I just checked and folded on the river, but against this tight player, I think it's justified. Let's not forget the fact of how we got here. I called a 3-bet with King 9 of hearts. That's not good. It just got me into even more trouble. Could have just folded 3 big bets, and instead I lost, a huge chunk of my stack. So this was hand number 2. Hope you enjoyed it. Look tomorrow for 2 more hands.